Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So we mostly have Netflix Avatar news here with some new posters as well as an interview and a few little bits. But I will start with the one non-Netflix Avatar piece of news, and that is just an update to what I covered in my last video. That was Magpie Games here on Twitter teasing something new for the Avatar Legends role-playing game. So they just said Delectable Tea or Deadly Poison coming soon. But then on their Discord, one of the mods was talking about this and confirmed that this upcoming thing, it's not the Spirit World book that we know is coming. Instead, this is actually coming soon for something else that she's excited about. Along with this in the Discord, you can find a lot of other kind of tea and also Iroh related kind of gifs and quotes in relation to whatever this thing is that's actually happening here. I'm not really sure what to make of this. This is the main quote that I have here. This is just a screenshot from Discord. The Spirit World book is still in development, so it's not that at this time, but it's being worked on. So just confirmation there that this being something different doesn't mean the Spirit World book is gone. That is still going to happen, but this is about something different. With that in mind, I've seen a few ideas thrown out there of like, well, they're really emphasizing the tea. Is it just going to be some sort of a, like, almost like a tea brewing style expansion that, like, hey, tea's kind of a notable thing in Avatar. Let's introduce that into the game somehow. Seems a little bit weird if they're doing a full-on teaser for it, and at best that would be like a small little booklet. Is it an Iroh-related adventure or more Iroh-related information? I'm not sure. Again, it's a role-playing game, so it's not just going to be all information. There's going to be gameplay stuff associated with this. So, you know, might this be set earlier on in the 100-Year War era, because the 100-Year War era is very, very close to like the end and doesn't really cover a lot of the new stuff. Might this be an insight into that? Like, because it's Iroh focused, maybe it will touch on his backstory. I really don't know what to make of this, so we'll see what Magpie have to say. Certainly they've maybe set themselves up for a little bit of disappointment if this is not something super interesting, but we'll see what happens. But then, into the Netflix Avatar news. So the official account has posted some more posters. They love these character posters. We have 4 Fire Nation character posters here. So here we have Azula in a bit of an action pose here. So that's kind of cool. The door with a dragon on it looks very nice. As people have pointed out, it's kind of like, would have been nice with the blue fire, but the idea is, I'm guessing they're going to wait and tease the whole blue fire situation with Azula. Because for new people, I suppose, they maybe don't want to spoil that fact ahead of time. And I completely understand that. This is just highlighting that in general, most of the fire around the Fire Nation that you will see is, typical fire. But cool. I like the 2 fingers out. It kind of hints a little bit at, like, obviously you can do some fire bending in terms of just like shooting it out like that. But it's also a lightning generation style kind of pose here, even if perhaps this hand doesn't maybe match up with that. It'll be interesting to see what they do, because Azula, of course, is a relatively new element for like a season 1 thing. So we'll see exactly how she gets used. Here's another look at Iroh, who we've seen quite a bit, of course, on the ship here. And again, looks pretty good overall, but there's not too much to say, I think, about Iroh. We need to see the performance more. Very cool shot of Ozai doing some firebending, and a better look kind of straight on at his kind of regal Fire Lord outfit, as well as, I guess, some of his kind of throne room stuff in the background. Again, another dragon imagery kind of situation there. Looks cool. People are very excited for Ozai. Then we have Zhao. So Zhao gets his first, proper like character poster here. So he gets the full army here. I think very much suggesting, I guess, that Zhao is going to be the one all over the place. He has the support. He's going to have the mass amount of troops. We'll see exactly how they potentially expand on his story, but it's going to be interesting to see how they, accomplish all of this and show his arc. Because, like, for instance, one of the changes, and we'll get into talking about some changes here in just a second, is that he's going to be leading the attack on Kyoshi Island, which was not the case in the animation. So very cool there that we have these character posters, but we'll move on to this new interview with Entertainment Weekly, so EW. So their article headline is Why Avatar The Last Airbender Had to Leave Room for a Season 2 Time Jump. And so basically the core of this article is talking about the whole idea of right now, they are, of course, not confirmed for a Season 2/3. I'm assuming it's going to happen. The second I think Netflix sees that it's doing super well in terms of numbers the day it launches, I think they're going to get the green light for Season 2 and 3 straight away, in the same way that I think Netflix One Piece got confirmed for that immediately. I'm not super worried about that at all, but the point is, so far they only have Season 1 out, and it's going to take a bit of time to ramp production up again, and of course there is a gap now between when they stopped filming Season 1 and when they're potentially going to start for Season 2 and 3, even if they do both of them potentially back to back. So that's kind of what's being talked about here. It mentions it here, that they filming for Season 1 in the summer of 2022. So it's going to, when the show hits, be the core of nearly 2 full years since they stopped filming, and it's going to take a bit of time to ramp the production up again, so it will be for sure 2 years, not to mention some of the scenes I guess were filmed later in production, and because they have some young actors here, you're going to start to notice that they are getting older, and that can't be ignored in the show. And they're just going to have to account for that within the actual story of the show. That's the point that they are making in all of this. You know, Gordon auditioned at 11. He's now 14. Our Katara actress was 14, going on 17, is now 17, and so on. And then that will only get bigger the longer it takes for the next season to ramp up. And so that's effectively what gets talked about here. You know, the 3 seasons in the animated series take place in the course of a year. It's under a year, but, you know, it's basically the idea. It's sub 1 year. And they can't do that because they had to do Season 1 on its own and see what happens. And they have to account for the fact that, you know, some time is going to have to pass between the first and second season. And that's like a time skip in universe between Season 1 and 2 of the live action. And it's mentioned here, part of how they accommodated this is that Sozin's Comet. So if you're familiar with this, the Comet is their ticking clock in the animation. We removed that particular ticking clock from our show for now because we couldn't know exactly how old our actors would be for the subsequent seasons. We definitely thought about that going into Season 1 so that we can accommodate for puberty, adolescence, time passing, all those fun things that happen to real life human beings that don't happen to animated characters. Now, immediately, a lot of people took this headline and the way some people reported on this as being they are removing Sozin's Comet. They are not removing Sozin's Comet. They are just basically removing the element of Sozin's Comet in the core of Season 1 where you are told when Sozin's Comet is returning. They're removing the clock, the hyper urgency that there is in the animation when Roku tells Aang that the comet that started the war will return at the end of summer. So that's what, as far as we're aware, that is exactly what they're saying is being removed, or they're waiting to reveal that until later on down the line in the live action. The literal point where Roku says the comet will return at the end of summer. You need to basically end the war before then. So it seems like potentially the comet will still be known about, but maybe they only find out much later in the series when it will return again. And that will, I suppose, create urgency later on in the series rather than from an early point. So I think they're really going to go for the idea that probably in between Season 1 and 2, they spend, I suppose, a reasonable amount of time in the Northern Water Tribe doing a lot of training, maybe even for a lot of earthbending. Aang gets kind of a lot of time, but he has to learn firebending, and Book 3 is when things accelerate quite quickly. And they're, of course, doing this for a very understandable reason, probably the most understandable reason for a live action show, and that is just that they are having the sort of age-accurate actors, but that was correct at the start of production. We are years on from there already. It's going to be even longer. And so they're not just going to keep in the Comet's coming in under a year, when the actors are clearly going to look 4 to 5 years older by the time season 3 comes out, whenever that may be. So they're waiting to say those details until later on, so they can match it up. That whenever they decide to do it, potentially like the library, they could do like a double celestial kind of event reveal where they find out about maybe the eclipse, but then they also find out that the comet is coming, and that, like, you know, okay, so the eclipse is our one chance to get a strike in before the comet, and that would be a cool way to add to that episode. Or they could just wait until book 3 to maybe do the full-on exact how the war started flashback like they do in season 3, and maybe reveal that, oh yeah, and the comet's coming soon. And that might come into play here. It is a change. It changes a decent bit in that, you know, what is the Aang, Roku, if they have a conversation, going to really consist of? How heavily involved does that mean Roku is in this show? Given that him revealing the comet to Aang was kind of the major kind of takeaway from that scene, but it will still hopefully be a big scene, depending on how they do it. But again, they have actors for the other avatars as well, so Aang might have also already had like a bit of a Kyoshi scene prior to the Roku scene, so what exactly is the significance, in a way, of him meeting Roku if he's potentially already had a bit of a connection to Kyoshi already? Maybe things get reordered slightly. We'll have to wait and see what happens here. But I know some people have been kind of freaking out about this, that this is the first time for a lot of people maybe there's been a change that they've heard about with the show that doesn't seem right or correct. But I think this is perfectly fine. We've seen this before. I know most people don't like to talk about The Last Airbender movie, but in The Last Airbender movie, they did it reasonably well as well, where they just said the comet's coming in 3 years. And I'm assuming they'll do something like that. It might end up being 4 or 5 years, but I'm assuming when they finally give details on the comet when it comes back, they'll just say that to match up with something that fits the ages of the actors and how they look by the time we get to doing that later stuff. So that's the kind of core takeaway from a lot of this. Otherwise, this is just general, like, what is Avatar stuff, but also again, first 8 episode season on Netflix on the 22nd, but interesting one here. Check back on EW this coming Monday for a special reveal. Excited to see what that is. I'm guessing that will be more characters. Might it be past Avatar stuff? We have to wait and see. But either way, it seems like the doors have been opened a little bit here on information. There's a little bit more detail being talked about here. And I think this is fine. Once they don't, I think, completely ignore the comet, which we know they're not. It's in the trailer. It's in the very start of the teaser trailer. The comet is here. They're not ignoring everything that the comet is. It's purely a timing situation. What's being taken out is the reveal that the comet's coming by the end of summer. That's the thing that they're saying is going away for now. So it's not even for sure. So that's the situation there. But just to mention some other stuff about changes. Some of the stuff I think has obviously gone down pretty well. The fact that, like, we're going to get to see Sozin versus Gyatso, which we don't see in the animation. We're going to get to see the attack on the Southern Air Temple. That is an example of a good change. For me, potentially some of the examples of changes I'm not super excited for would probably be this one here. The idea that during the flashback sequence with regards to how Zuko gets burned, Albert Kim is saying that they actually just have a full-on fight scene here, that Zuko fights back in the Agni Kai against Ozai. This is probably one of the ones where a few things that he said that I'm like, I'm not sure I agree with this choice, because I think it changes some of the kind of character arc intent and the takeaways from this sequence if Zuko does just fight back without too much resistance. Again, we're going to have to wait and see how exactly it plans out. But the whole idea that they're talking about, they choreographed a whole fight scene on a scene that in the animation is not a fight. It's meant to be a fight, but Zuko chooses not to fight. And that's the takeaway from his character in terms of who he was before and after being scarred. And I don't know, I just think if you have Zuko just be fully up for fighting his father, I do think that changes a little bit, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. That could be a change that I think we end up being like, I don't think you need to do that. If it's maybe one of your few chances to get an Ozai fight scene in, I'm not even sure that that's the best kind of solution here. That might be actually revealing the extent of like what Ozai can do to a certain degree too early. So I'm not sure about that change. The other change right at the end probably has to be this whole situation here where Albert Kim talks about the Avatar state here, and that one of the changes that they're making is that they're not going to use it as much as season 1. Fair enough, but that they're changing it to, you know, he can only access it in a specific set of circumstances. We tweaked the rules a little bit from the original series as to when and how he can access it, but that's part of the adaptation. Without him saying what the change actually is, I'm not sure immediately how I feel about that. I don't immediately feel negative, but that could be something that we end up feeling is a change that didn't maybe need to happen. And I think there's always going to be that discussion surrounding adaptations, is just that the creators can explain as much as they want why they made a specific change, but if we watch it and just feel like you didn't need to do that, that's just the opinion and how it's going to be. And I think, you know, we're beginning to, as the kind of discussions and interviews have gotten a little bit more in detail, we are beginning to hear about more and more of these changes, and I think a few little question marks are beginning to come up with. I'm not on the verge of being super negative at the moment, just because I, of course, have to wait and see this stuff in context, and that's why you can't judge right now. And you can only speculate about how I'm a little worried about this change, kind of a bit worried about this change, not so worried about this change. It could all switch around when we actually get to see this stuff in action, of course, in just under 4 weeks at this point. So that's the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on what do you think this Legends RPG thing is, given that it's not the Spirit World book. Thoughts on some of these character posters that we just got here. And then probably the most interesting part of this, what are your thoughts on them just changing the sort of timing stuff surrounding Sozin's Comet because they have to accommodate the actors aging and how long production actually takes? Let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments below. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.